right, so we are back on Play It Forward with Regina Ainsworth, director of Recombined, nominated by Shea Butler. Regina, thank you so much. Welcome.
Cassia, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time and everything that you're doing with the work that you're doing. It's an honor to be included. And shout out to Shay for,
Hey,
for the
Shay.
Play It Forward nomination. That's amazing. So I'm excited to talk about all things Recombined and all things of the filmmaking process as an indie filmmaker. Talk to me.
All right, we're going to go deep. And thank you so much for, support and, just kind of like those two candles coming together to make it a brighter place. So, that's the intention here with what we're doing. I know your work as well. And that does bring us to Recombined. And, wow, sci-fi genre, super like visually superbly executed, very technical film. It looks great. I mean, it's definitely, high pro level. And the first question is, what was that intrinsic little voice inside yourself that said, I want to work on this film?
Such a great question. I mean, for me, I would say that social justice is really my jam, and telling stories that we haven't seen with a variety of people that we haven't seen, I think is a huge thing for me. And so initially, I have to give a shout out of credit to the Alliance of Women Directors and the Writers Guild. They hosted a speed mixer, and sci-fi is a genre that I adore for these purposes. Like it allows you to explore the human condition. It allows you to explore issues a little more, I would say, kind of more safely, where people can be immersed and it's like one removed. Yet
Yeah.
there's a spectacle aspect, right, of
Mhm.
what sci-fi is and things that other worlds and other habitats that we haven't yet touched. So for me, I went to this mixer, and it was like a speed networking event, and I basically talked to these professional writers and heard their pitch on property that they had created. And this particular author, her name is Karen Sandler, and she has a trilogy called the Tankborn Trilogy. And we just hit it off on all social aspects, just all of the justice, all of the things that we wanted to communicate and put out there in the world, the central protagonists, the whole nine. So I just stayed in contact with her and read her book, and I helped her develop a short film that then became Recombined. So that's sort of the genesis. But the character and the basis of the world existed in novel form, and is available. You can get it. You can even get it at the library, frankly. So it's widely available. But the impetus was, we really want to have this available for the world to see. And I'm really big about that. Like, what art are you putting out there into society? What art are you adding value to? What is your voice? And for me, I knew that in order to translate these novels to potentially a television show or something there akin to that, people need to see what this is. And so then that was the process, was to develop that and create a lookbook and take it to short film. And it's rounding the corner on its festival run, and it's done very well, which proves that people are interested in this kind of material.
Definitely. I'm sure there's a wide audience for it.
Mhm.
And the protagonist, and to kind of just get a little more deeper into that why for you. I mean, I totally understand social justice and that and resonating with that. I'm kind of in that camp as well. And I think a part of it was just being born as a Libra, and those scales of justice just kind of representing my birth
Yeah.
sign. It's always been really important to have that fairness. And when you see just unfairness happening, it's just such an outrage. It seems so absolutely illogical,
Mhm.
really. So I think for you, what is it connecting, and just maybe briefly talking about the protagonist, and you can describe the protagonist a little bit, and maybe that inner connection that you felt with that character
Yeah,
as,
sure.
a person. human?
I mean, for me, Kayla is a genetically engineered non-human, and the bottom line is that she unleashes an uprising against her trueborn enforcers, while there's a destruction of the sacred union and the death of her best friend. So she basically rises up above what her status is. She was human. It addresses that, these gens have risen up in a society that has become segregated on the basis of socioeconomic status and the color of their skin and the way that they are born. And I feel like that for me says a lot. Like, why shouldn't people have the same opportunity to live freely and be who they are and express themselves? Something I always question. So when I found this character, I felt like she was a true central protagonist for that. It's really saying, okay, well, you have been born low, you have been born genetically engineered, or I won't spoil it for the,
Yep.
or so we
Yep.
know.
Yep.
So we're told. And her soul design is in basic servitude. And what she, on her basically her 15th birthday in the book trilogy, and we explore this in the pilot as well, she has to go on her assignment day, and she's given a certain skill set to which is superhuman strength, to go and be of service. But did anyone ask her? Did anyone, she doesn't have that option. She has to do this thing because that's what she was made to do. And it's really the exploration of when human will snaps into that and says, no, this is not for me. I'm more than this. And these are the choices I choose to make, despite fully risking her life or risking a complete reset, risking being erased essentially and made into something else that is not her at all. So it begs all of those questions to me that are uniquely human. Like, why can't you just do the thing that you want to do? What do you have to do sometimes to rise above your given circumstances? And what is like the heart of the soul? I think all of that is addressed. And it's definitely addressed through the series, but it's addressed really. You see Kayla actively making those decisions, even in the face of fear, as a young woman, saying that I'm more than this, and my family matters, and my friends matter, and our union that we're here matters, and our lives matter. And for me, that's what it is, really.
Hmm. That's awesome. You said you said some you said what's the heart of the soul, and to get it sets up the second question, stock question, to play it forward, which is, what is the meaning of the movie? And you can answer it in two ways that you may find interesting. Either one is the intention as you were developing it, or the reflection as you finished it.
Mm-hmm. So for me, when I think about Recombine, the title of Recombine is like a riff of recombinant DNA, and it's the definition to join together again. So what I like to leave the audience thinking is, it really is a teaser for a further exploration of how do we rebuild as a society that has become so ingrained in the separation. It's a theme that I like to continue to explore. I don't know necessarily that we went that deep in the film itself, but that's the journey that this film is on. That's the journey that this space that we've created, this world that we've built, starts to beg the question: is, if we are so far on separate sides and we've come so low as a society to continue to imprison others, whether, in theory, like Loka is, set far in the future, and it's, on another planet. And what did we do? We went back to servitude. We went back to empowering, having a caste system, and the haves empowered, have everything that they need over the have nots, like the 1% over the 99%. And I think that's a reflection of where, we are today, socioeconomically speaking. But it also begs the question of, like, what is human nature, and what do we do? In what ways can we migrate past that? And I think this character in particular does take that journey over time, definitely through the novels. It's all about, releasing folks into freedom, but also sort of resetting what this kind of a society is, and how do we rejoin after all of that has occurred.
Mm. Yeah. Um, there's a lot of themes that you've touched upon that are all connected,
Mhm.
and there's that individual will to freedom, or the pursuit to freedom, or call even
Mhm.
freedom.
Mhm.
Um, and then there is the opposition to that freedom, which is separation
Mhm. Mhm.
and the restraints socially
Mhm.
that can cause that separation. And I guess, how do you see the conflict, because it can be framed in all sorts of, man versus society, this, that, the other. But I guess, what is, I mean, is that enough? How do you see the conflict between, what's inside all of us? So not just the genetically modified caste or the privileged class,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
what it is that both classes need to overcome to find a
Mhm.
place of unity and peace.
That's great. That's a great question. I mean, what's interesting is that this, we chose a section of a very sacred union. So, like, gens don't typically get married. Why? Because they are not working, they're not allowed to live together. They're not allowed to have a life together. They have separate assignments. It's very rare, that, and actually very human, that, they would want to be coupled with somebody, or mated with somebody, or joined with somebody. So, in this world, um, it's the rarest of times to have any type of a marriage or a union.
Mm.
The religious aspect that has been put upon, the gens, is that work will keep you safe. As long as believe, work will keep you safe. And it's sort of a mantra that, um, has been ingrained into Kayla from an early time. And that's this whole thing of them looking into the mirror. It's their way of, like, reassuring that this is the right path for them, and that, as long as they believe that, there's no reason to fear. What's interesting is that, in this most sacred of spaces, the gens are on the hunt for, um, this this gen who has escaped, which is actually not, anyone that they know is in there, but they're tracking. So the enforcers and the trueborns have all shown up at this space, knowing that it's a rest day, that it's a most sacred union, that it is, an intrusion that is not permitted actually by the edicts that they have in their society. So it already kind of sets a powder keg, I think, in the sense that we're all in a position or in a space that is already, so sacred, and yet so fragile, and so, ripe for some kind of mega conflict to occur. And I think, then you have this third aspect of the bomber, and the bomber, represents, FHE, which is freedom, humanity, and equality. And there, it's like the IRA would be, say, like the closest to that. But they've chosen to do things more violently, and to usurp this, or, turn things over using the force of violence, rather than finding some kind of a peaceful way to reconnect and come to terms with the circumstances. And we leave you there. We don't answer any of those questions, because we want you to think about it. We want you to say, whoa, what the hell's happening? Like, there's this girl who's clearly in some kind of a servitude, or some kind of a cult, or some kind of a religious something at a wedding. These people who clearly have more authority and power have just totally taken over a sacred moment, a holy moment, and then this guy comes and bombs the whole damn thing, and you're wondering what has happened. But what's clear is this theme underwriting of force of violence and taking things by conflict. And further in the series and in the novels, that is explored. Like, how do you start addressing those things? How does one find their way back to a more peaceful society, an integrated society, and one that is a little more just and fair, or at least one could have freedom of choice and expression? So we don't address it in the film, but we leave you on a cliffhanger to start questioning those things, of finding the road back to creating a safe space or a normal environment. But I would say that it's fully rooted in conflict from the get-go. And once you understand like this world, I feel like it gives you a sense of that danger and a sense of what the protagonist has to overcome, a level that she, as still like a forming human being, has to find her path, the hero's journey, really. So it's a long answer.
Oh, it's great. I
A
mean,
very long-winded answer for what you just asked me.
no, I mean, I don't know if you answered the question, I'll be honest,
Yeah.
but it's not important from the perspective of that, there's maybe no answer. Maybe the answer is different for everybody at different times. Maybe the answer is love, how did you say that phrase again? The heart of the soul, right? That's what you said. But I think the dynamics and the fact that the sci-fi world is such a great space. I never thought of it as that way, to kind of stand back and see things a little differently, but from that lens that is just mirrors our own civilization so well. And so yeah, I mean, all the forces are there, and it's just life, it's life, and
Yeah.
it's everything at play, from economics, from the social to the spiritual, and it's a very rich environment that you guys have created and captured. And you said that the reflection, so I caught how you were saying they're taught that work will set you free,
Mhm.
basically. And it's interesting because that has two resonant historically, one in our own bootstraps culture,
Mhm.
and a part of that, there's definitely a place for activity and for rest as well. And then you mentioned the reflection of the ambulant that they pick up, that is used. Now, what context was that in? I didn't quite catch that.
It's like the infinite. It's their religion and how they connect with the infinite. And the idea is that you can hold the mirror to each other,
Okay.
and they're mirrored, they can
Okay.
hold to each other. So it's
Yeah.
just their expression of eternity, and that the things that they're doing have resonant and ripple effect,
Yeah.
essentially.
That's a huge metaphor. That's a
Mhm.
huge metaphor. Um, and maybe that's the answer right there.
I love it.
There we go. We hit it. Um, so, Regina, the last question.
Mhm.
Have you been changed by this experience?
Oh, 100%. I'm changed by every filmmaking experience.
How?
Every filmmaking experience. Well, if we're talking about um if we're talking about just in terms of like, for one, have a huge passion for sci-fi, for genre, for drama, for conflict, for things that are world building. And I had never done anything like this before, not ever. So, I worked with green screens, I worked with blue screens. I had to like have the courage, kind of like the protagonist, to rise up above myself, because also I don't come from money. I don't come from connections. I don't come from having a ton of resources. But what I do have is passion, and I do have an eye for this. And I'm a very visual, cinematic person, and have been raised that way my whole life. So, having the courage then to put together a lookbook and a package, and then start asking for help, was what I had to do. It was a huge thing. I had to crowdfund this. this money didn't just like fall out of the sky for me in terms of somebody privately funding me. I had to put myself out there for the whole world to see in a very raw way, just to get the funds to be able to put this together. And to be honest, like the first producer I had said I was underfunded and dropped me. So I had to be like, okay, that's where we are. I'm going to do this myself. And I started asking for help. And what I found was that people were willing to help. Like I was able to shoot this in one Saturday at Warner Brothers on the ranch. I just asked. I did not. I said, I don't know if you have downtime, if whatever this is. That changed me. Like having to humble myself in a way that I had to put myself out there in a very exposed way, but also to believe in myself enough to say, I know what this vision is. Here's my lookbook to show what this is. And I know that I can maximize this. Will you come along? And for all the people to have said yes, like Canon Burbank provided, free like space and pre-production to have meetings. It's been such an incredible, I had so many great filmmakers come along, Stacey Black and Luke Darrow and Shea Butler. Everyone was just like, yeah, let's do this thing. Let's figure out how we can help you make this happen. And knowing that you have a tribe of folks that are willing, because it is a collaborative, the most collaborative art form, I think, of all. Everyone has to trust each other and create a safe space and be on the same board in terms of what the vision is. But I would say like that's my superpower, is like adding value to folks and enabling them to be their best selves, like giving them the freedom to collaborate and say, this is what I'm thinking, but what do you think? What do you have to add value to?
Boom.
So it's incredible filmmaking.
Yeah. And it's funny. The reason I said boom is because like in my head as a follow-up question, I was thinking, hey, it'd be good for myself, but really for everybody, all other filmmakers to understand, what is that superpower? Like, how do you tap into that? And you just, boom, you said it, this is what I'm thinking, but what are you thinking? What do you see? And really meaning it.
You have to really mean it and empower others. You have to say, hey, I'm not the best production designer, but this is what I had in mind. What do you have? And then the incredible artist, Christine Solozzi, she's like, yeah, let me see, like, these are the things that she had, like full on art paintings that she drew. And just because they get your passion, they understand what you're trying to do, and they're on board and want to contribute. That's so huge.
It's huge.
In our DP, like I spent like a full, I don't even know how many times at like Aroma Cafe, like just talking shots and, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? And it's a riff, like that's exciting, right?
Music. Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's very cool. Regina Ainsworth, thank you so much. It was a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, Kasia, thank you so much. I'm honored that you reached out and that you made time. I think it's just an incredible platform that you have, and a real opportunity you've created for other indie filmmakers and filmmakers of similar spirit. So I'm glad that you're part of my tribe now too.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you. Likewise. Yeah, we're leading, we've got a common goal, and it is to, for freedom.
Yes.
Every day. Thank you, Regina. I will catch you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.